Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into one of the most chilling and tragic stories in aviation history. A story that starts as a routine flight, but ends in a horrifying descent into darkness. What happens when the person you trust to keep you safe becomes the greatest threat? This is the story of Germanwings Flight 9525, a flight that wasn't brought down by mechanical failure, bad weather, or even terrorism, but by the mind of one man. Strap in, because this isn't just a story about a plane crash. It's a story about mental health, secrecy, and the devastating consequences of silence. Let's take off. The sun rises over Barcelona, casting a golden glow over the bustling airport. Passengers mill about, some sipping coffee, others checking their phones. Among them is Captain Patrick Sondenheimer, a seasoned pilot with over a decade of experience. He's a man of routine, calm, and precision. Today, he's piloting Germanwings Flight 9525, a routine flight from Barcelona to Düsseldorf. Patrick checks his watch and heads toward the boarding gate. He greets the crew with a warm smile, his presence instantly putting them at ease. The co-pilot, Andreas Lubitz, is already in the cockpit, running through the pre-flight checks. Andreas is young, ambitious, and has a reputation for being meticulous. But today, there's something off about him. His hands tremble slightly as he flips through the checklist, and his eyes dart around the cockpit as if searching for something. Patrick notices but doesn't say anything. He assumes Andreas is just nervous. It's not uncommon for young pilots to feel the pressure. "Everything good?" Patrick asks, his voice steady. Andreas nods quickly. "Yes, Captain. All systems are green." The two exchange a few more words before the passengers begin boarding. Among them is a group of high school students, laughing and joking as they take their seats. They're returning from a school trip to Spain, their backpacks filled with souvenirs and memories. Patrick unbuckles his seatbelt and stands up. "I'm going to the restroom. You've got the controls," he says, patting Andreas on the shoulder. Andreas nods, his expression unreadable. As soon as Patrick leaves the cockpit, Andreas's demeanor changes. His hands move quickly, adjusting the altitude settings. The plane begins to descend, slowly at first, then more rapidly. In the cabin, the passengers feel a slight drop in altitude, but most assume it's just turbulence. The flight attendants continue their duties, unaware of the danger. The cockpit is silent, except for the hum of the instruments. Andreas Lubitz stares at the control panel, his hands trembling slightly. He takes a deep breath, then reaches for the altitude selector knob. Slowly, he turns it down, from 38,000 feet to 100 feet. A soft beep confirms the change. The autopilot system obeys instantly, adjusting the aircraft's trajectory. The nose of the plane tilts ever so slightly downward. The descent begins, gentle at first, barely noticeable. Andreas's eyes remain fixed on the altitude meter, watching as the numbers start to fall. Outside the cockpit, the world continues as normal. Passengers chat, nap, or scroll through their phones. No one has noticed, but soon they will. Patrick Sondenheimer returns from the restroom, adjusting his uniform as he walks. He casually reaches for the cockpit door handle, locked. He frowns. That's strange. The door's only supposed to be locked from the inside if there's an emergency. Patrick presses the intercom button next to the door. Patrick speaks loudly. "Andreas, it's me. Open up." No response. He tries again, knocking firmly. Patrick speaks again. "Andreas?" Still no response. Inside the cockpit, Andreas does not react. He hears Patrick's voice through the intercom. but his hands remain on the controls. His breathing quickens, but his grip tightens. Patrick now presses the emergency keypad outside the cockpit door, entering the emergency override code. A 30-second countdown begins before the door unlocks. Inside, Andreas sees the emergency access request flash on his screen. With one press of a button, he cancels it. The cockpit door remains locked. Patrick's heart starts to race. He tries again, pounding on the door with his fists. Patrick panics and speaks, "Andreas, open this damn door right now." Still no response. Something is very, very wrong. In the cabin, the flight attendants notice something strange. The plane is descending too quickly. At first, it's just a slight pressure shift. Some passengers pock their ears, thinking it's normal altitude adjustment. But soon, the descent becomes noticeable. A woman grips her husband's arm, passenger whispering, "Why are we going down so fast?" The flight attendants exchange uneasy glances. One of them, cautious but calm, picks up the intercom phone and dials the cockpit. No answer. She tries again. Nothing. The nose of the plane tilts forward slightly more. A businessman looks out the window and frowns. The mountains below are getting closer, way too fast. In the front rows, some passengers start whispering. A few take out their phones, recording the scene, sensing something is wrong. A baby begins crying loudly. Patrick runs to the nearest flight attendant. Patrick, urgent, out of breath. "Get me the crash axe, now!" The flight attendant freezes for a second, then rushes to the emergency supply cabinet. She pulls out the firefighter's axe, stored for emergencies. Patrick grabs it with both hands and runs back to the cockpit door. He swings it hard against the reinforced metal. Thud. The door doesn't budge. Again, thud. Nothing. Patrick is sweating, his hands shaking, his breath ragged. He knows time is running out. Inside the cockpit, Andreas hears every blow. He flinches slightly, but doesn't react. Instead, he reaches forward and increases the rate of descent. The plane now drops at 3,000 feet per minute. The ground proximity warning system, GPWS, activates. Terrain, terrain, pull up, pull up. A robotic voice echoes through the cockpit. Andreas doesn't listen. The plane is now visibly descending. Outside the windows, the French Alps loom larger, closer. Passengers begin to panic. A woman grabs a flight attendant's arm. Woman, terrified. "Why are we going down? What's happening?" The flight attendants try to stay calm, but their faces betray their fear. One of them picks up the intercom mic and speaks shakily. "Flight attendant, ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. The captain is handling the situation, but it's clear, no one believes her." A man in the middle row starts praying. Another tries to call his wife. Several passengers text their loved ones. A young girl cries into her mother's arms. The mountains outside rush closer. Patrick is now screaming, slamming his fists against the door, his voice hoarse and broken. "Andreas, think about what you're doing. Think about the passengers. Open the door." Inside the cockpit, Andreas is eerily calm. His hand tightens on the control stick. The plane drops below 2,000 feet. The GPWS blares again. "Terrain, terrain, pull up, pull up." Passengers scream. Some hold their loved ones. Others close their eyes, whispering prayers. Patrick's final scream echoes through the plane. Then, at 9:41 a.m., Germanwings Flight 9525 slams into the mountains at full speed. A deafening explosion. A cloud of metal, fire, and debris scatters across the rocks. Then, silence. On March 24, 2015, Germanwings Flight 9525 crashed into the French Alps, killing all 150 on board. Rescue teams struggled to reach the remote site, only to find devastation. Investigators recovered the black box, revealing the chilling truth. Co-pilot Andreas Lubitz had locked the captain out and deliberately crashed the plane. Families were shattered, and the world mourned. In response, aviation authorities enforced the two-person cockpit rule, and airlines re-evaluated mental health screenings. A memorial was built, and Captain Patrick Sondenheimer's wife founded an organization to help grieving families. Today, a single white flower sways at the crash site, a symbol of loss, remembrance, and lessons learned. Like, share, and subscribe. Some stories must never be forgotten.